Welcome to Corpse Club, the official podcast of DailyDead.com. I'm one of your co-hosts, Jonathan James, and today I am joined by Derek Anderson, Tamika Jones, and Bryan Christopher. Today we are going to focus on Nightmare Alley from Guillermo del Toro. And with the movie having been out in theaters for a little bit and streaming for a little bit, and now it's available on VOD and I think soon Blu-ray. It's not an advertisement, it's been out for a while. We are going to jump into spoiler discussion of the movie, see what my co-host thought about it, and then we have some other titles we're going to talk about, some Hulu horror films that just came out recently, and more. So we're gonna just get right into it and hear what my co-hosts think about Nightmare Alley, just as we like to do, go around the room briefly. This is one that I've been excited to see for a while, and I know for some of you, you're like, hey, well, we've seen Nightmare Alley. I saw it back in December, and I'm very happy for you. I truly am that you had a chance to see it early, but as it is, I've been waiting for a while because I'm not going to theaters, and not yet anyway, and so I was happy that it finally arrived, and I was waiting. As my co-hosts know, I was waiting till it came into 4K because I wanted that, especially with the Guillermo del Toro film and the fantastic colors and the cinematography. Like I wanted 4K. So and it didn't for the streaming services, Hulu and HBO Max, it didn't offer a 4K version. I'm like, I can hold out just a little bit longer, and so it was worth the wait. But to my co-host who saw it in 1080, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, only the highest of revolution in the James household.
But again, enough of me and what I think of the movie. We'll get to that later. Again, full spoilers for our listeners who may not have seen it. This is your last warning. But we'll go around the room. I will start with Derek. Derek, brief 30 seconds. What do you think of it?
It was, I think, true to its name. It was kind of like watching a nightmare. A very beautiful, mesmerizing nightmare, but definitely left me with a lot to think about in some unsettling ways. But I think that was a job well done on everyone's part. So it was up to that high bar that Del Toro has set for himself, I think.
Okay, and Tamika, how about you?
I agree. I wish I had seen it. In a 4K, but my internet wouldn't allow that. So 1080p we are, but it was still beautiful, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm with Derek. I had to watch it a second time because I really had to think about the way everything unfolded, which is great. And I love that it didn't seem like a Guillermo del Toro film, because I guess I just attach him with like really beautiful like creature films, and this was very grounded as it could be. But it was more grounded, and I still really enjoyed it. It was a beautiful film too.
Okay, and Bryan, how about you?
This one didn't quite connect with me the way other Guillermo del Toro movies do.
Okay.
There was still some stuff to like in it. It was gorgeous, as any Guillermo del Toro movie is going to be. I 100% want Cate Blanchett, her character's office. Like I want to live in that office. It was the set design on this movie is flawless. But it just it was Guillermo del Toro for me trying something a little bit different, and I don't know that he quite hit the mark for me.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, no problem at all with that. It's interesting because I don't even know if it's hot and cold. I really enjoy Guillermo del Toro and his filmography, and so even if the movie isn't a complete win for me, I still appreciate what he's doing. And so it's interesting, though, that for some filmmakers, there's like clearly what their best films are, like amongst like film fans and horror fans. And with this one, if you were to ask somebody what their like top 3 Del Toro films are, I feel like in a lot of cases it would be completely different. And I'd have to say that I really enjoyed this. what I really loved about Nightmare Alley was his ability to like take you into that world. I feel like this world is like fully fleshed out. It feels living and breathing, and his ability to kind of transport you to this carnival and to this time in not exactly the real world, right? It's like Del Toro's world. But I think he does a great job, as he does in many of his films, but specifically, I think in this one in particular is, I think, it was mentioned earlier that there's, that he's kind of known for his creatures. Well, there are different types of, creatures we can say in this movie. But they don't rely heavily on prosthetics. So with that kind of stripped away as the hook, it's interesting to see how he's still very, very, very effective at being able to pull you into his world and create these believable characters.
I didn't really think about how lived in the world feels, but at the same time, maybe that's what I was trying to get at when I said it's grounded to an extent. Because it does. They're like, oh gosh, like just the clothes and the hotel and like the design of like the carnival, it just feels like, I don't know, like it's just I'm not very familiar with like Art Deco. Is that what he was going for? But it felt like, something that would have existed at the time. Just everything was so beautiful. I think maybe that's why I forgave some things that didn't quite land for me. I don't know.
It feels like the decorations, the production design is like another character in the movie. And it like I said, Tamika, it instantly transported me into the movie, because within like 15 minutes, you're already going into the funhouse with Bradley Cooper's character, and you are just kind of transported to this other time and the whimsical yet unpredictable world of these carnivals. Like it didn't take long where it felt like I was kind of sucked into the movie. And I thought that was probably like the most fun thing for me to watch, was just like, how are they going to like set up this scene? Because I think it was Tamara Deverell who did the production design, and her team and their team was just outstanding, I think, at kind of building that world.
And interestingly enough, once they get out of the carnival and they start, the part of the movie takes place literally and in the movie in Buffalo. And so I was around at the time, and like, unfortunately, they kind of downplayed how much of the movie was going to be Buffalo. And then I'm watching the movie and I'm like, a lot of this movie's in Buffalo, and I should have been hanging out there more often, because it's in downtown, which is maybe 20 minutes or 30 minutes away from me. But, the big, they used town hall because they have all of this old architecture there. And so, there's, some of the shots when he's outside, like that's the square, like the main, square in downtown Buffalo. And they just added like taxis and some CG to kind of change the vehicles. But otherwise, like a lot of the buildings on the outside and inside, they're not CG. I can take you there one day.
Wow. That's interesting too, because I believe Crimson Peak at least takes place in like an earlier version of Buffalo.
It
like
does.
At the beginning.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But I don't think they used Buffalo for any of the scenes in Crimson Peak, but they did use some areas in Toronto, like Casa Loma, amongst others. And I know he loves Toronto, so I know that some of the other scenes in Nightmare Alley were Canada as well.
Nice. Yeah, like Brian said, I want that office. But yeah, it's amazing though too, because it feels like, especially Cooper's character Stanton is like larger than life as he is. It feels like even he's like small compared to these giant like buildings and carnival that he walks into. Like he's walking into the mouth of these giant structures, and it feels like those are like the dominant characters that kind of reflect what's going on in the movie, it's kind of interesting to see that progress as Stanton either evolves or devolves, depending on how you look at it throughout the movie, as he climbs the ranks of deception.
I think, speaking of Stanton, I think for me, and this is a lot of, I think, what doesn't necessarily work for me for Nightmare Alley is more personal preference as opposed to like, when we're talking about Texas Chainsaw, like I had a lot of notes with a capital N. This is more, I just think I recognize it as stuff that didn't work for me. Like obviously it's all subjective, so it's all kind of personal preference, but here it's nothing I can point to say like it was like a misstep, just it didn't work for me. And one of those things is Bradley Cooper as Stanton. Um, it's it's hard to describe. Like it's because I don't think you're ever really supposed to necessarily fully empathize with Stanton as a character. But it's a tricky tightrope for these kinds of like dark noir at its core con artist movies, because that's kind of really what Stanton is. He's a really good con artist and he plies his trade through mentalism. And it's a movie where I couldn't ever quite tell, like, are we supposed to be rooting for him to get his comeuppance? Are we supposed to be on his side and seeing this as a tragedy? Is a little bit of both. And some movies I think walk that line a little bit better than this one did for me. And it didn't really, I didn't get the sense that the movie knew whether or not we were supposed to be siding with or against Stanton.
That's really interesting. Because I would say that some of that is definitely what I would consider like maybe the gamble that this particular movie took, which is kind of letting you know where the story is going to go, like way ahead of time. Mm-hmm. Because having Willem Dafoe talk about that, the process for like creating that character that he locks in the cage, I'm like, well, I know where this is going. Uh-huh. And so there are a number of things where for me, once I kind of dialed into that, and then also seeing like a lot of the things that Bradley Cooper was doing from the beginning just felt a little, if it wasn't completely slimy, it was definitely red flaggish, like even the beginning, we see him associated with burning a body. There may be a good story to that, but or a good reason for why he's doing it. But to me, it starts as kind of like a negative. Seeing how he ends up poisoning the guy who's like teaching him. There's like a number of things, even at the start before he goes off on his own, that kind of, and that's only like the first hour or the first 40 minutes of the movie is like this guy is just like, ugh. And it doesn't really get any better. And so, you are kind of watching this kind of knowing that one, you don't particularly, you're watching somebody you don't care for, which you don't have to like what they're doing. But you're watching somebody you don't care for and you're watching their downfall. You're trying to, the way I saw it is that throughout the movie and as we get through it, it's like, how does he get outsmarted? This person who thinks he's the best, who's conning people, getting one over, how do they finally get one over on him? But like I said, it was a gamble. One, letting you know enough of the information up front so that you kind of already made your decision about him. And then also with the casting, originally it was going to be Leonardo DiCaprio. And Leonardo DiCaprio doing it, and I don't know what approach he had, but just thinking about some of his other movies and imagine him doing it maybe with like a Wolf of Wall Street kind of thing, where he might have more of that like boyish charm and he's conning people, but he's super charismatic. But I actually think for what Del Toro was going with kind of like that strong silent type and more and what do you call it? And definitively not noir, that Bradley Cooper fits that type. Whether or not that was like the best decision for entertainment purposes, I don't know. But it certainly is. Some interesting choices were made.
Well, I think this is a pretty big departure for Del Toro overall. Not just the fact that, usually he does kind of the more fantastical creature feature kind of stuff. But because his sweet spot is generally creating characters that are kind of typically known as monsters or as kind of living in the darkness or like the other, and making them endearing. So Hellboy, The Shape of Water, the characters, and I think Pan's Labyrinth, you get a lot of that. People who you don't necessarily always associate with kind of being the protagonists are people who are kind of being put in that spotlight, and you're kind of dared to side and sympathize with these folks. Here, I think it's people who are in that same kind of realm where it's people who are on the fringe and people who are, have been damaged in some way, but who have been kind of turned for the worse by it. And I can't say if it was like good or bad or if he did that incorrectly. It just didn't click for me the way his other movies do. He's so good at drawing the good out of unexpected places. And maybe that was, maybe it hurt from expectations where you're kind of expecting that to come from somewhere. And that not only doesn't come from Stanton, it doesn't come almost across the board. Like, Rooney Mara as Molly, and maybe, of course, frequent collaborator Ron Perlman as the strongman are kind of like the beacons in the movie, but everybody else is layers of kind of shady. Stanton kind of being the top, Kate Blanchett's character Lilith being another one. I think worst of all is Willem Dafoe. Just kind of, when they go in depth about how he finds his geeks, you kind of come out of it with a really bad taste in your mouth. And then of course there's Richard Jenkins's character, who clearly has done awful things to a lot of people. So it's, I appreciate Del Toro attempting something, I think, a little different with this. It just, again, personal preference. I just don't think it connected with me the way his other stuff does.
Or even Toni Collette. Oh, wow. I just love her so much. I can see why she was cast, because like she does I thought she did a really good balance of like being kind of feigning hospitality and kindness, but also just being so greasy. Maybe it's just, I don't know. I find characters like that to be really interesting because they seem to be, there's so much that you can do with them versus when they're just so pure and innocent, like Molly's character, I don't know. Well, okay, yeah, maybe that's it. Just the way the film looked and the characters is what just got me. And I just kind of thought, okay, everything else, it's whatever. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, well, this thing has characters for miles. And I think one of the interesting things about this is that, like, I don't know, for me, this was like, what it was like, this was like 2 hours and 40 minutes, 2 hours and 50 minutes.
2.5. Yeah.
I knew you knew. I knew you knew, Derek. But I easily, like, maybe had this been a TV show or like had the movie been longer, like I still would have been okay. I feel like we only scratched the surface on some of the stuff that's going on in the carnival. Maybe we get a little bit, we get a lot more, once the movie kind of shifts and maybe like that second half, and, we end up in Buffalo, kind of less, but that, carnival stuff, like I want to spend more time there. It looked like I said there, the characters, it looked like the cast was having so much fun. Again, with these characters they could really dig into. But yeah, I mean, this is like, I think this is a movie that's so layered. I know that Tamika, you talked about watching it multiple times. I haven't had a chance to see it again, but like this is one of the only movies I've seen recently that I just really wanted to get back to, because I feel like there were so many just like little things, whether it be, in the set design, whether it be little character moments, just little things I missed there. And, but all of it to me adds up to something, like I said, that's really, really special. And, and of course you see where this movie like has Del Toro's like horror sensibilities, and this goes into like a little more like unsettling and creepy places. I think, Derek, you mentioned like there's like that fun house, and of course the things that are in the jar, and of course, also, and I say, because I think all of us are kind of desensitized to violence, having watched so many episodes, whether it be the Walking Dead or whether it be any recent horror movies, that this still did have a number of gruesome moments, including the end as he he punches Richard Jenkins. I think he takes his nose off, right? So he's it's pretty gruesome stuff for the average person, right?
I think it was actually a bit of a callback to I don't know if he takes it off or if he like crunches it in. Similar to, it actually reminded me of Pan's Labyrinth, another Del Toro movie, where the villain takes a bottle and just like caves in a person's skull. And that's one area where Del Toro is so, he sneaks up on you with those scenes. It's like you said, it's a movie that up until that point isn't terribly violent. It's definitely an R-rated movie and it's definitely like an adult movie, but at that moment he just catches you off guard and reminds you like, oh, by the way, I'm capable of putting together these really horrific practical effects.
Yeah. It's I think it's a good kind of a reminder of like the stakes of this world, because as whimsical as and magical as the carnival is, it's also like a place of really grisly violence, or I guess violence just kind of follows Stanton around just based on how he lives his life and the rules that he plays by. And whether it's like the chicken scene like 10 minutes into the movie, or like you said, Richard Jenkins getting his nose punched in or pulled out or whatever exactly happened there. I think there was like a tooth getting pulled out of Cooper's knuckle in the bathroom later on.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds you of, you can tell Del Toro, especially with his practical effects background, he wasn't afraid to kind of push the envelope there. And it really is a reminder of just how deadly this game is that Stanton is playing.
Oh yeah, I mean, he really gets himself stuck between a rock and a hard place. I mean, you're just wondering, how is he gonna get out of this? Oh my God, we're doing this. Okay. Why didn't I see this coming? Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is it okay to talk about the ending?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I already said some guy gets his nose punched off, so we're good. I've taken us almost to the end.
True. This is true. I guess my question about the ending is, okay, because something Bryan said, it kind of like makes me wonder, what are we supposed to get exactly from how this all wraps up? Like, because usually, so much of this is kind of like whimsical, but then also kind of set in some sort of reality. But then we get to where Bradley's just like killed how many people at this point, and then just like bums disappears off the grid for a while, and then shows up at a new carnival. You know what I mean? Like, what are we supposed to get from this? Like, he gets away with like murderings. You know what I mean?
I guess that depends on your definition of getting away with it.
Okay.
Will he have repercussions with the law? It looks like probably not. But I do think that why do I keep saying Del Toro? Del Toro is going for more of a poetic justice, and also one that kind of aligns with one of the threads of the movie. Was you get the sense that Stanton knows who he is. He knows he's not a good person. And it seems like a lot of what he's doing is just trying to like get his while he can, because I think he sees like his tale doesn't end well, and it doesn't end well because honestly he deserves it, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing come to fruition when he gets, when you see that he's going to in fact become the geek that he was kind of so horrified by when he heard the process of how geeks are made, like when he sees that's where things are going for him, he's basically like, he accepts his fate. And there's something, I think, pretty tragic about that. And it is the one
Yeah.
part of that was a little unexpected, because Jonathan, like you said, they do telegraph that as an ending, fairly early. Like they put a lot of emphasis on talking about, like, showing the geek, talking about how a geek is made, and the fact that they don't revisit it for a long time. It's like, well, that's going to come back in some fashion. I'm guessing it's going to be Bradley Cooper's future. So I think
Mm.
that the thing that catches you by surprise is the degree to which Stanton, like, obviously he's like deeply sad, but he's not like shocked and horrified by it. He's like, yeah, I was always going to kind of end up here.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. So it's not like some type of like loop, like because I always wonder, like, what was he doing before this movie started? You know? So
Yeah.
I just
Uh,
thought, okay,
so you were
so
wondering if it's maybe like one of those like narrative Morbius strips where, like, at the beginning the geek he's seeing is actually him or something like that. And
yes.
it's, I don't think it's, I don't think that supernatural element is at play. I think it's more of just like a thematic. He's horrified by this, by the way this guy is treated at the beginning, and then he finds himself in that same position at the end.
Mm, you
And
know,
then just knowing who Stanton is, you got to wonder, is he going to climb up the ranks again? Or is that
yes,
just going to be his
yes.
fate?
Yeah, like he's gonna that okay, see, articulating my thoughts so much better than I could, friends. Yeah, like so I just wish this movie would have just kept going. I know it's not ideal to, make a 6-hour movie or whatever. But just like I just kind of wanted to see, like, okay, are we gonna, like, is there gonna be an uptick again? Because he's a fairly decent con artist when he doesn't like completely devolve.
I mean,
So like if
I think the, I think what they're trying to say, and I may be wrong, but I don't think he has much time left. I mean, I think,
mm,
when you saw the other guy that was in that same situation, they had to drop him off because he was in such bad shape because they treat them so
mm-hmm,
poorly. So is
mm-hmm,
there a scenario, and it's kind of choose your own adventure, right? So there is a scenario where you could say, it's up to the watcher, right? Once the movie's out in the world, it's up to, whoever's watching to interpret it in the way they want. But it does seem as if it's kind of, near the end of the road for Bradley
mm,
Cooper, or at least he's fallen or he will be falling as far as he can.
okay. Okay. Oh, well, thanks for the conversation, friends. I needed that. I've been holding on to that for months.
There's- yeah, it's so it's kind of like what Brian, you were saying about, like, how do they want us to view Stanton? Because even after watching it, I think they keep some things ambiguous. Like even with Pete's death with the alcohol, I feel like I'm still not 100% sure if he intentionally gave him poisoned alcohol because he was distracted by Willem Dafoe in that scene. And he was so upset at Willem Dafoe that I feel like, even though he had something to gain by killing Pete to some extent, it's like, well, did he? And at that point in the movie too, they're kind of like keeping it ambiguous of how like evil will Stanton be to get what he wants, and you still don't know kind of what happened with his dad at that point in the movie. So I feel like they make you like try to figure out whether or not you should like this guy, or if he's doing, like, intentionally doing things nefariously. And then by the end, we kind of see that, yeah, he is very obsessed with just kind of getting his way in life and everything like that. But I feel like there's still some things that you could argue one way or another even after watching it. So maybe that's where the repeat viewings come in.
And it might be a thing where part of where it misses me is that it kind of comes off as almost like a morality tale. Like, this is Stanton getting his comeuppance for kind of a lifetime of being crappy to people in general. And I don't know that I think there's potential for something more interesting where again, and I'm trying to think of an instance where this is pulled off. I think that the best I can think of is like Hannibal, the TV show, where the character of Hannibal is on paper this really horrible person, and but you find there are times where there's narratives where he's just straight out the villain and you're kind of hoping for his downfall, but there are times miraculously in the show where like you're kind of siding with him and hoping like he and Will Graham go riding off into the sunset as a happy couple together. I never really got that here. You know, he was just kind of a crappy person, and it's the rise and fall of a guy who's not really all that great. So it just kind of, it was a little straightforward for my taste.
What I'd be interested in is, I haven't read the source material. There's a novel the same name from 46, William Lindsay Gresham, and I haven't read it. I know this is closer to it. I have seen the movie. It's movie 47. So I had seen that since watching the
Shed
Del Toro
any more
one.
light on Stanton
It's
or their take on it?
I guess the best. There are many differences, but it softens the character and it softens the ending. And so, but I don't know if the book follows the same way or if he was kind of staying more true to the novel, which I'm guessing, which might have been a little edgier and a little more along these lines.
Interesting. Yes, there's a lot to digest there, but it's, yeah, I feel like Cooper did I feel like his performance was really good for this, because he can be that kind of charming personality, but then he's also able to kind of turn on a dime, and then we see his relationship with Rooney Mara's character deteriorate over time, and I feel like, yeah, I don't know, it's a very interesting role, and like you said, if Leonardo had gotten that would have been, maybe he would have been even more like doubled down on the charming aspect of that character. But it is interesting how it all plays out in the end with Stanton, and it kind of, yeah, by the end I feel like he is made irredeemable, but then like he tells Rooney, he's like, well, they were trying to kill us. And it's like, well, he's not wrong. And it's not like Ezra was a great guy either. So, I mean, to some extent, you can kind of see his point of view. But at the same time, he kind of put them in that position in the first place. So he's the one that keeps pushing things farther than they should go anyway. So it's a very, yeah, you almost feel kind of weird after watching it, because you're like, well, that was a journey with a character I'm not really sure I wanted to get to know that well.
Exactly. It's like own worst enemy. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's so true. It's like, yeah, you're right. They are bad people, and they were trying to kill them, but you're here because of you. So, oh gosh.
And one of the things
I'm
oh, you had Derek.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm glad that that Rooney Mara's character did get away from that toxic relationship, and that, because I was kind of thinking that they were like, when she decided to help Stanton out, that somehow that would result in her death, and that he would be her downfall. So I'm kind of happy that she was still able to get away from him, and not, because I feel like so often in movies a character like that would end up dying just to like hit us over the head with the fact that Stanton like messed up her life. But I'm just glad that she's still able to kind of say her piece and then leave on her own terms at the end. So that was a little refreshing.
I agree. I thought for sure she was going to die in that kind of climactic sequence, and I was glad she didn't. You know, I was glad she didn't kind of get, you know, killed off in the name of, because it would have been a scenario where it's just kind of like it's killing off her character for the sake of showing how his world is collapsing around him. So that would have been, I think, kind of a cheap move. So I was glad to see that Del Toro avoided it.
Or there's like speaking of film noirs, like the code, like the moral codes where even if you do something like you make a slight mistake, something slightly bad, it's like, well, nope, death for you. That'll teach you. Like, oh no, please don't do that. She's such an innocent little bird. So yeah, I'm happy for that. Like, okay, happy endings. That's good.
Yeah, I think one of the things is I'm real happy that even though obviously I didn't personally find this necessarily uncomfortable, but I don't, I don't like Bradley Cooper's character. And I usually don't like watching or returning to movies like that. But in this case, like I said, because Del Toro was behind it, and you can just see the love and care he puts into this. And also, we're used to a certain style of movie, a certain type of movie that becomes popular amongst, we'll say, filmmakers and Hollywood, more importantly, because that's what they're asking for. So you don't see a lot of filmmakers who are given $60 million to make a 2.5 hour noir film. And it's similar to, like, at the time when I saw Crimson Peak, I was like, I was okay with it. It took multiple watches before I really kind of got into it. Now I love it. But because I was expecting something different, having seen his other films, so maybe in somewhat of a similar situation to you or Brian, with this film. But again, at the end of the day, I was like, well, they gave him 40 million or 60 million to make a, Gothic Hammer style love story. I mean, like who does that? Like, when people get that opportunity, when someone gives you that much money to make this type of movie, you take it. And we were talking about filmmakers before too, that are kind of untouchable in that sense, that, as long as they stick within a certain budget, or that they have such popularity that people will continue to fund the work that they do. And we see some of those maybe like quote unquote gamble movies that might tank somebody else's career, but with certain filmmakers, they can make it. And, with that, we got Malignant. With that, we're getting some of the stuff that, M. Night Shyamalan's doing over at Universal. And then, of course, then with Guillermo del Toro, things like Pacific Rim, or I keep saying Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, things like Nightmare Alley. I feel like they're a little bit more, and it didn't necessarily connect with people in theaters, although one could argue that we are still in a pandemic, amongst other things. But it didn't find its audience there, at least. And so that's definitely a little bit more of a gamble, but I'm glad that he took it. And obviously, it's not like he's not going to get other movie deals.
I do feel a little bad though, because on the Wikipedia page it does mention, it says it flopped at the box office, but yeah, it came out in December, which, like, we're in the middle of, if I remember correctly, Omicron at that point.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a little harsh to say it. Like, I mean, if you're just saying flopped in the most technical sense of the term, where like it didn't make the money it should have, but I don't know. I think there should be like an asterisk next to that
for a lot of
circumstances.
Yeah, for a lot of COVID releases, and also like Spider-Man was still like was doing huge money. So I mean, like I said, people were going to the theater to some degree, but a lot of people still aren't. Even today, there are a lot of people who are immune compromised who are staying in, who rightfully and for good reason don't feel comfortable going to the theater yet. And I know this is new territory for a lot of studios. I know that they have distribution deals with, especially because Fox is now owned by Disney. So they have certain deals in place with different streaming companies, with the theaters. And so that's why we had kind of this structured release. I think it's, whether it's Disney, Fox, or whoever, I think this structured release is like bad for viewers. And we could all agree that in an ideal world, it would be great if we could all see movies at the same time across different platforms, because there are people with disabilities that can't go to a theater, and they used to have to wait much, much longer. So these windows are shortened. And so there are, like I said, some benefits to those changes that have been made. Now it's like a 45-day window. But ideally, I would love it if we could have it all come out at the same time. I think, and of course we would need, more data and movies to prove this. But I do think if you spend all your marketing budget and you say, hey, we're in theaters and you can buy your tickets to see it on the big screen. If you want to buy it, digitally, and I know they experimented with rent versus buy, but whatever the case is, I know there are a lot of people that would pay $20 to rent or to buy a movie digitally because they don't want to go see it in the theater. And so I think this is one of those movies that if they had been a little more open with their release, I think it really would have benefited, because I think its audience it's going to find after the theatrical release and starting now with the digital release or even streaming. It was on HBO Max, it is, and it's on Hulu.
And also on top of that, not only was there overlap with Spider-Man, Spider-Man actually came out the same weekend.
Oh yeah,
that was never going to happen. Like that it didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, and
I feel like movies that come out right before the holiday season or right in the middle of the holiday season, right before the end of the year, just to kind of hit that Oscar sweet spot. It's really tough in some ways because there's such a traditionally there's so many movies, like big movies that come out around that time, that inevitably there's always like one or two that get lost in the shuffle that are from like big name directors. And because this is one that I feel like even if it had come out in pre-COVID, it's like there's so many movies that come out that time of year that it kind of forces viewers to choose, like, okay, well, there's like 5 movies that come out the week of Christmas, and I can only, over the course of like 3 weeks, I'll probably see like, maybe 2 of them or 3 of them or whatever it is, even if it's like premium VOD. So it's kind of a bold strategy on some parts to do that, because you have to have like that confidence that people are going to want to see a 2.5 hour noir movie, which I think they totally should, but are they going to is the question. And in this case, I feel like there's just so much competition. And then on top of that, of course, COVID, which is also another huge factor. So it's unfortunate, because I feel like we'll never really know how this movie could have done and in the box office without those external factors kind of controlling its destiny.
But what I will say is one of the good things about being an Academy Award winning filmmaker is that your filmography is going to get boxed together. It's going to have a life well past theatrical. Way more people are going to see it than people who saw it in the theaters. And so, this will be one of those movies that people will continue to discover and recommend, and maybe we'll likely see it on, Criterion, because I know they released a bunch of his others. And so, it's one of those things where, I'm excited for, and two, we're getting to that point where we always talk about where there's like so many movies, people are missing out on stuff. So there will be things that I think people will, like I said, will gravitate to and discover. And hopefully this will be one of them. Like I said, whether you like it, love it, don't really like it, by the time you finish watching it, I do think it's worth a watch, just to see the level of skill on display, and so yeah, so I'm happy we finally all got to not only see it, but talk about it, because this is one kind of like Spider-Man that has just been chipping away at me. It's been like, I need to see it. I did finally see Spider-Man yesterday, though. I finally saw it. I avoided spoilers for a long time.
Did you, was it all a surprise? Did you avoid all spoilers, or was there some stuff where it was like, I knew that was coming?
Has everybody seen Spider-Man?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay, then I'll just talk in general terms.
Yeah, I was just gonna say yes or no. You don't.
No, that's okay.
Well, because there are multiple layers of spoilers with this movie.
Yeah. I didn't see the trailer. I would say at a high level, I knew where everybody was going with it, but I hadn't seen images to prove what I knew was likely true. I muted everything I could that was related to Spider-Man, and I avoided a couple of sites I usually go to for months. I'm like, no. But yeah, I finally saw it, and it was worth the wait. It was a lot of fun. It's like watching one of those like big finale comic book series, like, I don't know, like X-Men Age of Apocalypse or Spider-Man Maximum Carnage. It was like seeing like one of those bigger Infinity War kind of on screen. It's like I can't believe like they put all this stuff on screen, because this stuff used to be with the original Spider-Man, with the trilogy with Tobey Maguire, it was about keeping it grounded to a degree, and then a lot of the Fox movies were about, again, you can have this movie, but you can't have Sentinels, you can't have robots, you can't have Galactus. So there was always like a line that you couldn't cross with those studios, and now to see them being crossed all the time with Marvel is pretty cool.
In Fantastic Four, you can have Galactus, but he has to be a cloud.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so we're clear.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, I finally had a chance to see that. I haven't seen Batman. I know that two of you have. I don't want any spoilers, but we're hanging out for a minute. So as we jumped into superheroes, because I took us there.
You did.
Tamika, did you like, and it just like I said, very quick, mostly because I don't want spoilers. Did you like the movie?
I won't spoil. I swear it. Oh yeah, I loved it. I can't say. I've been seeing people say you can't say that it's 3 hours because it's like 2 hours and like, I don't know, 56 minutes. Like, no, that's 3 hours.
Yeah, that's 3 hours.
Yeah,
and there's nothing wrong with that. Don't be. Yeah, they don't have to be ashamed of it. Embrace it.
Yeah, and usually I do not like. I always say, that I think the sweet spot for any film is hour and 45 minutes. But this, I make an exception. It's worth it. The whole runtime, it's just perfect.
I'm glad you liked it. And you saw it twice, right? I think I saw it on Instagram.
Yeah,
you see it again? Yeah, you even saw it again.
I even saw it again.
You even saw it again.
So 5 hours and 52 minutes worth of Batman.
I was trying to think.
That math sounds right.
Yeah,
I couldn't do it, so yeah. And Derek, what did you think?
Oh yeah, I haven't seen it twice, but I want to because I loved it so much. And as long as it is, it really doesn't feel that long, just because the story moves along so nicely and so like you compulsively want to keep watching it, that it just doesn't feel like it's 3 hours. But yeah, what Matt Reeves did with this and his approach to trying to, because of course when like a new Batman movie, like Batman, Spider-Man, we've seen so many different incarnations of these characters on screen over the last 15, 20. With Batman, it's like 30 years plus years. You kind of are wondering like, well, what are they going to do now? And it's always kind of like an uphill battle, that first movie, to kind of reintroduce this character. But I think the way that he did it really kept it fresh. And it's the most detective Batman movie I've ever seen, as far as like focusing on those aspects of the character. So for me, it's definitely, I'm not ready to say it's my number one Batman movie, but I would say it's definitely like top 2 or 3. And that might go up on repeat viewings, but I don't know if it'll ever go past number 2, but it's definitely in that top 3.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I'm super excited for it. I think, and I don't know if this is official yet, or if it's rumor, but I'll believe it for now because I'm holding out hope. I believe that it's going to hit HBO Max in like a month, so I won't have to wait as long as I did for Spider-Man. So I believe it'll be HBO Max, but I don't think they officially announced it. I think the guess is that because there's a 45-day window that's hitting Max first. And maybe they did announce it officially. I've been trying to stay away from my spoilers.
One thing they have officially announced is a spin-off series focusing on the Penguin.
I did hear about that.
That is officially happening, which is very exciting because I cannot believe that that's Colin Farrell playing the Penguin under those prosthetics. But yeah, it is going to be interesting. I feel like they're going for that Peacemaker magic, but I'm guessing it'll be a lot different tone than Peacemaker.
And I'm looking, Deadline is saying that like there hasn't been an official release date, but they're pretty confident that April 19th.
19th. Yep. That's what I assume. That's a 45-day window. So theaters renegotiated with the studios. There's a lot of back and forth. As best as I can remember, I believe there was that fight with them in Universal where they're like, Universal went straight to, they skipped some theatrical releases, and AMC was like, well, we're not going to show your movies anymore. Well, they made up, and other theaters, same thing. They made deals, and it looks like 45 days is the new thing. So movie hits theaters, 45 days later, it hits streaming, or it can hit VOD. It's up to the theater or the studio. So you'll see sometimes you'll still see like a tiered release. So, we could still see it hit streaming and then VOD and then Blu-ray DVD.
I will say Warner Brothers has consistently been like the best throughout the last couple of years at like making their movies available, new movies available to people like sooner.
They took a huge loss, and I'm not going to say like, I understand the business side of it. It's not like good guy Warner Brothers. Like they did take the loss to move people to HBO Max like that. Like the goal of this was to boost up their streaming service. That being said, the byproduct of that was that we got some pretty amazing movies that we could see from the comfort of our own home on day one. And it was a lot of fun because they released so many great genre movies last year. It was an all-time great year for them. And honestly, some of those movies probably would have been beat up at theaters. They probably wouldn't have done as well. But like that, we got Godzilla, Malignant, Matrix, Suicide Squad. I know I'm missing more, but like,
it's still so surreal to me that I saw the Matrix like first run release at home. That was such a weird experience for me. It was awesome. And I loved it, but it was very weird because I don't know. I think there's something very like with something like The Matrix, you associate that with like a movie theater. So it was very weird seeing that, like, and I think it was probably 1080p on my laptop. So Jonathan, I'm sure you'll spit in disgust, but I still enjoy the hell.
I'm not gonna live it down. You can't really, and I try to explain myself more, and I just keep digging the hole. But honestly, like, you can't really tell the difference between 4K and 1080 depending on the setup. So on a lot of the screens, like it's just the same, and it doesn't matter. So, but I have the home theater set up. Like I said, I have my whole family over, and like, and I wanted 4K because I knew they had it. That's all. It's I can't. I can see everybody's faces looking at me. They're like, I will watch it in 1080 if that's all they had. But I knew they had a 4K version waiting, because they released all the HBO Max releases on 4K, but you needed certain devices. So you couldn't, if you had a PlayStation 4 or 5, doesn't matter. It wasn't in 4K. It was only 1080. I don't know all of the devices, but I know the only one I have is Chromecast. It's like, I don't know remember what it's called. It's a specific type of Chromecast, but they're like their best Chromecast will screen HBO Max in 4K. Otherwise you don't get it. And so I had to buy that because I wanted to see Godzilla in 4K and and Justice League 2 came out. But I wanted to see all the HBO Max titles in 4K, and so you can do that. Then the only exception was Nightmare Alley because it was a Disney release.
Oh, that seems so weird hearing that Nightmare Alley.
Yeah,
a Disney movie.
Yeah, a Disney movie. But yeah, Disney had a deal they made with streaming services, so it hit. There was another movie that did the same thing. I just can't remember off the top of my head, but it hits Hulu and it hits HBO Max at the same time.
And unless listeners think like you're going to watch Nightmare Alley and see like the Disney logo out front, like it's a Searchlight movie, which is under the overall umbrella of Disney.
Wait, yours didn't have the Disney logo? Mine clearly had the Disney castle. Mine.
Wait, this wasn't a Dumbo prequel?
No, they're definitely adding Cate Blanchett and the other actresses as their Disney princesses.
Oh God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lilith making an appearance as the Disney princesses.
Yeah.
I would watch that.
Sounds true to me. That sounds true to me.
Yeah, at the theme park. I know they're making it part of the theme park. Nightmare Alley ride.
Oh my gosh.
I seriously would love to go through the Seven Sins like hell funhouse that they had.
Yeah, that's what they're building.
Cool.
Yeah, you get to go in the cage yourself. They'll give you the chicken.
Oh gosh, I don't want to go that far.
Depends on how hungry I am.
Yeah. I mean,
Sounds like one of those immersive experiences.
That is, that's one of their that's one of their restaurants. So you get to, it's all immersive. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Now, is it like
that
a
would be
lobster
a
tank
nightmare for
where you get
kids.
to like choose your own chicken?
Yeah, there you go. And they have the details on what its name is and where it was born. Okay. Well, Disney, you know how to reach out.
Right. Family friendly.
Yeah. If the Star Wars cruiser doesn't work out, I got ideas for Nightmare Alley.
Exactly. Let's get it going.
What they really should do is like a Del Toro ride through all of his movies. Like when he had the traveling museum a few years ago with all of his artwork, they should do just like a Del Toro ride and put all of the creatures and like
I wouldn't put it past somebody eventually doing
Labyrinth.
That.
Yeah.
His
I feel like that would be perfect.
Yeah, his museum exhibit was great, which was, I mean, it was all the stuff in his house. And it was just, they just took all the stuff out of his house. And, but it was great to see all the like inspiration that he'd get. I mean, there was, life-size statues. There were just tremendous artwork and posters and just all kinds of stuff. And it was just like, just interesting to see, all the things that he gravitated to or that kind of helped inspire him. And then, seeing the kind of the pictures of where those things were then in his house and in his room. It was pretty cool. I think my favorite thing was he had like an original, like H.R. Giger, like alien, artwork. So I remember that one really stood out to me, but he had all kinds of great stuff. And of course, things from the movies.
Sketchbooks that he used when he was like coming up with ideas that were in his movies. And he had
some of the original paintings from I was gonna call it Pacific Rim, but I'm not, even though I said it right now. Crimson Peak. I can't for the life of me remember that name. Okay, we're moving on. We promised our listeners we were going to talk about some Hulu horror movies. And so, Tamika, I know you really enjoyed two films and again, there's a lot of options out there. So you may have missed that these are streaming, but Tamika wants to make sure that you watch them. So Tamika, why don't you tell us about them?
Okay. So I watched a movie called Fresh. That's a Hulu original. And actually, I only really recognize Sebastian Stan, but it's got a great cast. And like I mentioned with Nightmare Alley, I really love characters. And there are so many really interesting characters in this film. So I'm scared because I don't know what I should say or not say because there's a revelation in this film that I don't want to spoil because it's okay, you kind of know from the trailers that like something is up with I think his character's name is Steve, Sebastian's character Steve. But when it could be anything really, but the revelation is so good. I just can't ruin that for you. So I'll just say that there's a girl named Noah. But it's not spelled like with an H, like Noah from the Bible, because I was trying to like decipher that, like why her name was Noah. So I can't help myself. That's what I do. And she meets this guy. She's got like a bad dating, record. And she meets Steve, and she's just like, oh, he's so nice and he's cool and different, and we're like weird in the same kind of way. And she thinks they're hitting it off, and then he turns out to not be who she thinks he is. And it plays very well on like the fears that you have when you're like, you meet somebody and like dating just in general and like just personally for me, how unfun dating is and meeting people is. And it's just like, I don't know, it's like, it'll hit close to home if you're in a similar, rut situation. But yeah, the reveal is great. It's kind of gruesome and gory, if that's your thing.
That's our thing.
Yeah, it is our thing.
It is. This is Corpse
Yes.
Club. It's got to be our thing. It's got to be our listeners' thing.
Yes. Yeah. So it's totally your thing. I swear it. I swear, give this little film a chance.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I am excited to watch it. I haven't had the time, but I will be catching it very soon. I know my wife Christy, she also wants to see it. So yeah, we'll be.
Really?
Yeah. So we'll be checking that out. And I know where things go. So,
you do?
but I won't say anything because I don't want to give away. But I know where things go, and based on that, I'm very excited. And then I know the other movie that you wanted to talk about. We recently reviewed on Daily Dead. It was called No Exit. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. So No Exit, again, it's the sweet spot, like Fresh. It's like an hour and a half, hour 45, in and out. Things escalate pretty quickly, which I love, but it reminds me of it's like a very well-contained film. There's really like one set, the main character, her name escapes me right now, but she's going through a lot in her personal life. Again, very good characters, very interesting, well-developed characters in this.
Is the main character Darby?
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I wanted to. That's not. I was going to.
And I'm not
Tracy.
psychic. I'm just stealing Derek's power of IMDb.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't say Tracy because I knew it was like a C, like a CY something.
Yeah,
or
it's
no, Darby.
Darby, yeah.
B with a B.
By Havana Rose Lou.
B's right next to C. Close enough.
True. Thank you, Bryan. Thank you for defending my honor. Thank you. But there's a big snowstorm, and so she can't, go visit her mom, and so she gets, she ends up like staying in it's not a rest stop. Like, what is it? Like, I guess it is kind of some sort of rest stop area because you can get like snacks and there's a bathroom. But there she meets other characters.
Yeah, it is a rest stop, I think. I think it's just one of those rest stops that doesn't some of the rest stops have some of the rest stops are super fancy and some are not as fancy.
This is like a Michael Myers rest stop.
Because you could there's really nice benches, you can sit down, you can lay down. I've never been to a rest stop like that. Usually those are straight out of a horror movie, just a hole in the wall. We're not stopping there. Let's just keep going. But the Allstate man is in this. The Allstate guy.
Oh, cool.
I can't think of his real name.
Yeah,
Dennis Haysbert. Ooh, I got you. I got you on this IMDb
Major
game.
League.
Yes. Yeah, for the win. Thank you. Thank you.
I love him as Pedro Serrano from Major League. So
yes. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
He just has the best, most buttery voice. He should totally sell insurance. Perfect for that. Made for that. And acting too. He's so great in this film. And most of the things I've seen him in, I've never seen him in anything that I thought, Allstate guy, no. And then I think there's there's 4 other characters who are I know they'll seem kind of paper thin, you can see, their intentions and their motives coming, but I promise you, it's not that straightforward. And there's really good twists and turns. And again, like Fresh, there's a revelation that I'm trying hard not to ruin.
I didn't know there was a revelation in this one. That's a revelation to me. I thought it was straightforward.
Okay. Oh, God. I started sweating, but I was counting the other characters because I thought, oh, no, please, God, don't say it. Don't ruin that.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I'm not. I swear.
It's like the Bye Bye Man. Don't think it, don't say it.
Exactly. True. Okay, so I'm not thinking it. I'm not gonna say it. But I thought it was a wonderful watch. I watched it twice because I was trying to figure out something that happens towards the middle. And I thought, okay, let me watch that again, see if I pick up on that. But I do. I love a good, like horror, thriller, mystery. And this hits all those boxes.
Yeah, I'm
Sounds
intrigued by this.
really cool.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of this one before, and I love me a good locked room mystery, which this seems like
Yes.
it is. So I think this is going to be one I need to check out.
Yeah. And you would think that, okay, it's really one location, it's snowy, that, oh, this isn't going to work out. But no, I swear, no, let it burn. Give it time. It's kind of like not slow, but it's a little, it takes a while to get going, but I swear, give it a chance because it's so worth it. It is. Oh, no, that's not who I thought it was. Dale Dickey? No, that's okay. Sorry, I too am doing some IMDb magic.
No worries. It's what do you call it? It's hard to keep all this stuff straight. Just for our listeners, we have IMDb up. I need it. I wouldn't be able to keep track of all the names. Some people are able to just keep them in the back of their head. I think Heather is kind of a dictionary with that. Yes. I would need some kind of notes or to be able to switch back and forth the movies. I need the names or the character names because sometimes I might know the actors, but I won't know the characters, and so I do have. We do have tabs so I can take a look at it because otherwise it would just be like that person who was in that movie.
Or like I did, the Allstate guy.
It'd be sometimes I do have some family conversations where that's what it'll be. It'll be like, well, I saw this movie. It's got that guy and he was in that movie with that girl. And I'm like, and I've gotten pretty good at being able to say, well, what happened in that other movie? Well, there was time travel. And I'd be like this. I'd be like, yeah. But thanks for the Hulu recommendations. I know we do have a Shudder recommendation. I think it's a recommendation because you want to talk about it. Maybe it's not a recommendation, but from Bryan, I know it's Hellbender. But I did want to preface this a little because sometimes, as you know, I'll stalk you on social, and I do think that this was in response to something about it would pair well with Turning Red. And I saw Turning Red not too long ago. We don't watch just horror movies, and there are maybe some little horror elements. I've heard some people say it was a little scary at some parts, but yeah, I saw Turning Red and had a lot of fun with it. Having lived in Canada for a little bit when I was younger and going to Toronto frequently, it's definitely a very, very Canadian movie. And so on top of the wonderful message, which I think it has, it was kind of fun to see, this is clearly, Toronto in terms of how it was designed and in terms of, there's your Tim Hortons there. And then also, like I said, I think just a really good story. And anyway, so I'm curious to see how that pairs well with Hellbender. But anyway, I'll let you take it from here.
So yeah, for as different as these movies are, and I really like both of them. I love Turning Red. It's definitely going to become like a staple movie for me because it's just so. It's the most adorable movie I've seen in the past year. It's really well done. But the connection for me between Turning Red and Hellbender is that it's really two movies about the bonds and the challenges between a mother and a daughter. In Turning Red, it's played a lot more for laughs and a lot more for kind of like aw shucks moments. Hellbender takes a much different approach to that relationship, but I think it's still getting to some of those same core themes. This movie is done by it's a great kind of DIY COVID film made by the Addams family, not the Gomez and Morticia, but rather a family, I think in the New York area, I want to say, just because I know at least the movie takes place in New York. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it's like a mom, dad, and particularly one of the daughters is really involved in kind of being this movie making team, and it was directed by actually all three of them, John, Zelda, and Toby. and Zelda and Toby are the main stars. So it's definitely, it's a pretty isolated movie. It's very much made during kind of like the peak of COVID, but it is a movie that works because it is an isolated movie, and they work the isolation into the story because Zelda, who plays Izzy the daughter, and Toby plays the mother, are kind of this isolated family that live alone out in kind of the sticks in I think like upstate-ish New York, something along those lines. And the mother is very possessive of the daughter, doesn't let her to go to, like, they live near a small town, but she never lets her go there. She tells her she's sick and that, she could be in danger if she goes. And, you find out fairly quickly that that's a cover story for the fact that they are this interesting type of witch, like, and witch doesn't exactly get at all they are, because they're also this kind of interesting supernatural predator kind of a thing. It's hard to describe, but you see it play out in interesting ways in the movie. And I'm really not, I'm not giving anything away. They introduce this fairly quickly. But the tension of the movie is between kind of the mother who has been trying to shelter her daughter from kind of who she is, and now the daughter, kind of think of it as like that kid that got like homeschooled and wasn't allowed to like, drink or go to any parties. And then all of a sudden it's just like she's getting both barrels of this experience. And it's really good. It's got a quirky sense of humor, or a quirky personality to it, but it also gets very dark. I think the acting is really well done by both Zelda Adams and Tommy Poser, and they do a really good job at maximizing the use of the fact that they're not making a big movie, but it's very beautifully shot. They use kind of rustic rural New York State really well. There's a lot of great cinematography involved, and it's this really interesting contained little story, and I liked it a lot. And I think we're already starting to see that the Adams family is getting some good word of mouth, so I think we're going to see some big things come out of them in the future.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about this now from you, and Shudder's releasing so much. I feel like I'm having a tough time. I'm having a tough time in general keeping up with everything that's being released, but I didn't used to with Shudder, and now it's like they're acquiring so much cool stuff. It's like every film festival, it seems like there's an accompanying announcement about a new film they've acquired. So I will have to check it out.
Yeah, me ditto on that, because I've heard good things about this, and yeah, I need to do a Shudder catch up anyway. So putting this on the top 5 to watch list on that particular streaming service, and then I've probably got like 3 dozen movies to watch on Hulu. So I know what I'm going to be doing.
Yeah, we got to take like just a week off. Shut off Daily Dead. No Corpse Club.
Yeah.
Sorry, listeners. And we'll do our catch up week. And
so if you get that like no service message when you try to go to Daily Dead, it's because we're just catching up on horror movies.
We're not going to just not post. We're going to turn off the server. We'll turn off the server for the week.
You can't even look at the old stuff.
Yeah.
There'll be a really loud like dial-up internet noise that goes with it too, just for fun.
Yep, my favorite. Well,
freak people out and have it go to like the blue screen of death.
Well, with that, we are going to end this week's episode of Corpse Club. I want to thank my co-hosts for joining me. I want to thank Bryan, our engineer, for helping us out each and every episode. For our listeners who are looking to find out a little bit more about what's coming up in the latest and greatest horror movies, I highly recommend going to dailydead.com this week. We have our South by Southwest coverage. And so we have reviews for Ty West's X, which is coming out this week, and I hear is fantastic. Heather gave it a 5 out of 5. We also had reviews from Michelle, who talked about Hypochondriac and The Cellar. That was the other one, among others. And so we have some great reviews, some great interviews. So check out Daily Dead to get all of that. I will also say, I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, but we're also doing a little bit of a charity drive. We do want to support trans kids. Trans kids everywhere, right? We want to support them, but especially, with what's going on in Texas and what's going on in Florida, we want to be able to do our part to help on with those causes and raise awareness. And so, whether you want to help there, we also know, right? There's things going on all over the world. So whether you want to help out with that, also there's things going on in Ukraine. If you want to make a donation there, if you want to help people with any kind of medical care related to COVID, there's a lot of good that we can do. And so I do want to, recommend and suggest to our Corpse Club listeners that, anything you can do, whether it's, spreading the word, that's great too. If you can, if you can contribute a little bit to, your favorite charity or to one of these causes, that would be great as well. And we encourage you to do that. If you do that over the next 30 days, all I would say is email us at contact@corpseclub.com. Let us know about your donation. You can blank out any details you want, but just show us your proof of donation. If you don't have a Corpse Club membership, I will be happy to give you one. And then for those of you who are in the United States, for Canada, might be the case, might be able to do it as well. It depends on shipping. But for people who donate, we'll say over $50, I will ship a Corpse Club t-shirt out to you as well. And so, again, reach out, contact@corpseclub.com, and we appreciate any word you can spread, any donation you can make, and we appreciate it. Just a couple of extra things. Like I said, if you want to help spread the word about our podcast, we always do appreciate that. I'd rather you donate, but if you can only do one, if you can do both, rate and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts helps get the word out. And as I mentioned already, if you want to reach out, contact@corpseclub.com is the best way. But we're also at Twitter, or on Twitter at Daily Dead News, at Corpse Club, and on Instagram and Facebook, we're under Corpse Club as well. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay scary.